Last week we began Kohelet, and we gave an introduction about this book that was put together by Salomon Melech. A book about Chokhmah, about wisdom, not just about any wisdom, not about just any knowledge, but the knowledge of life, which is the most important knowledge of all. We're here for a number of years. We want to make sure we know what we're here for, that we do the right thing. You only get one chance. Unless, of course, you include reincarnation, but that's something different. So in order to be prepared for this journey, we want to be as equipped as possible. So last week we covered an introduction, a little bit about who Salomon Melech was, how he gained this incredible amount of knowledge. Ki hu haya chacham mikol adam, he was the wisest man who ever lived. This chokhmah was, of course, partly a gift from Shamayim, but it was also chokhmat chaim, nisyonot mi'achaim. The various experiences that he has acquired throughout his life. And according to tradition, this particular book was written towards the end of his life, after he's gained a lot of insight. He saw the many, many mistakes people make, and the Havel. What a shame for people to have to repeat the same mistakes. Why don't we just put together all of life's experiences as much as possible and let future generations learn from this so they don't have to repeat the mistakes. That's what he did in Mishlei as well. Great sefer to read, to learn in depth, and hopefully if we implement what we learn, we will be avoiding a lot of the mistakes that people make. But it's not only mistakes, it's also about attitude. And that's really, I think, more important than anything else, is how do we react towards certain situations? How do we deal with certain problems and challenges that arise in life? How are we supposed to understand things that happen to us? And the like. So between Mishlei and Qohelet, you actually have the answers to many, many such questions. And today we'll be going through the first few Pesukim of Perek Aleph, of the first chapter. But before we go to those Pesukim, I want to share with you the highlights, even though we've covered a little bit of that last week on what he talks about. But perhaps we can cover some of the highlights in the following way. We discussed the various Ikarei HaEmunah, 13 principles of our faith, before we began Qohelet. So in some ways, some of these principles are in this book as well. And he discusses the various ideas in his own words. And before we begin, perhaps we can go through quickly what those principles are. What are the main points in this sefer? For example, one of the things that he will emphasize is that there's no doubt whatsoever that there's hashgacha elionah, that there's divine providence. There's divine providence, al kol ma'asenu, that means that we're held accountable, Hashem is aware of everything, He gets involved, and this is a very important point to get across from the start, because there were other civilizations that believed that God created the world, but they could not fathom, they could not really understand that this great God, Almighty, is actually involved in such small details happening in this world. That was something that Judaism really introduced, that He's involved, He's aware of all the pratim aktanim, all the small details. He's aware of our thoughts. Very important point to get across, and that is pretty much discussed in this sefer as well. In his own words, in various Pesukim, you will see this point. He doesn't say this is a principle. He talks about the various things that go on, how you can't just get away with it. Hashem is aware. Point number 2, Sha'olam hazeh mechudash, as the Pasuk says, Asher asa ha'elukim, when he uses the word that God has made, so that implies that there is a God behind this. There was no Big Bang. It did not happen by itself. This world is created and managed by a supreme being. Ha'olam mechudash comes to exclude anybody who believes in evolution or believes that this world is just billions of years old because it formed by itself. No, it is created because it has a purpose. So what you will see is, once you say or you admit that it's created, then it must be created for a purpose. Have you ever seen somebody make a big skyscraper for no reason whatsoever? Obviously, not only is there a lot of planning and money going into it, there's a purpose. So if you hold or you agree that this world is created, that means it's purposeful. If you see purpose or design, then you also see it's created. You see, it works both ways. Created, you agree? then there must be a purpose. You see the purpose, or at least some of the design behind it, then you must infer that there is a creator behind it. So this is also very much emphasized. We also see in the Sefer that Briat HaOlam is betachlit u'shlemut, that it's also perfect, it's very well organized, which also adds not only to the beauty of the world, but it helps those who are looking for purpose and design. Well, wow, everything is so just right. Look at your fingers, 5 here and 5 here. Why not odd numbers? 9. How about 9? 4 and 5. No, they're exactly the same. 2 eyes, 2 ears, wow, 2 nostrils. Everything sets of 2s, but thank God, only 1 mouth. Could you imagine what the women would do with 2 mouths? 2 cell phones? Yeah. Anyway, some men know how to talk a lot too, not just the women. So Baruch Hashem, but there's a reason behind it. The teeth, and they come out just on time. Imagine if the baby had teeth when it was born. The poor woman, when he would be suckling, he would bite her. No teeth for the first few months while the baby's suckling. Wow. Well, people don't pay attention. You think people know these things? They just go on. They don't stop to think. It's all chokhmah. It's all design. It's all shlemut. It's beautiful. Everything has just the right colors. Imagine a world that's black and white. No, you have reds and pinks and orange. And sometimes even in one bird you see several colors. It's beautiful. So this is a beautiful world. It's organized. It's just perfect. God's creation is perfect. And he points that out. He also points out that with all the beauty and organization and purpose that this world has, we cannot, in our limited human minds, understand everything there is. Just impossible. So get that straight from the beginning. Even though you'd love to be a scientist and try to understand and figure out everything scientifically, guess what? I have a surprise for you. It's not possible. There is no scientific, in quotes, scientific answer, scientific explanation to everything under the sun. There isn't. There is something called the 5th dimension. What? 5th dimension? I've only known of 4. No, there's a 5th. You can't see it with your naked eye. Not even with a microscope. Some things you can't see. They're there. Oh, come on, there's nothing I can't see. Well, there is something that you will admit exists and you can't see. Oh, what's that? That's electricity. Can anybody here see electricity? No. We know it exists when the lights are on. Right? We know that it's produced through a certain power. So just in the same way that here you have a power that you know exists but you can't see it, there's other things that exist that you can't see. Man is composed, another idea that he will emphasize is man is composed of the 4 basic elements. Since these are all physical elements that are physical in nature, they fall apart. Everything that is physical falls apart. Mitporer. Therefore, since man in his essence, in other words, the physical essence, not the neshama, the composition of man eventually falls apart, does not last, he should not overemphasize that which he needs for his survival. Which is what? Basic food, drink, sleep. Don't overdo it, because eventually the worms will eat it anyway. I mean, what do you got to... that's not what life is for. That which you're going to satisfy physically is going to go to waste anyway. It's going to fall apart. So that's not something to overemphasize. That's not something that deserves too much of your attention. You're better off just investing your time and effort much more on those things that are more of a spiritual nature, good deeds and so forth. Those are true accomplishments. Another point that he will talk about very, very much is tzarot, all kinds of pains and painful experiences, sufferings, illnesses, downfall. That's all called tzarot. Tzarot in Hebrew is a general word for all kinds of issues that we have where we're troubled by them. It could be illness, it could be economic, it could be all kinds of things. Tzarot, war, is also tzara for more than one person, for an entire country sometimes. So he will talk about tzarot. What's the reason behind tzarot if this is a perfect world? Well, the world is perfect when it comes to creation, but man is not perfect. And because man who has free will is not perfect, he's capable of being the source of his tzarot. In other words, the source of tzarot is man himself. The source of all troubles. If this world is a perfect world, then the source of the trouble is man-made. Believe it or not. Yeah, man-made. Just like the table and chairs is man-made, tzarot is man-made. Mipi elyon, the pasuk says, lo tetzeh ra'ot. From above, ra'ot does not come down to this world. Bad things don't happen. Man draws it down. Man brings it upon himself. So he is the source one way or another. We don't understand how and why always, but somehow he is responsible for his own tzarot, for his own problems. And of course there's the point that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha, his divine providence, includes la'arich af. La'arich af means to be tolerant. He does not have a human character like we do. If somebody misbehaves, he doesn't punish right away. He's all merciful. He's all good. So he's marich af means he's tolerant. He sometimes gives an extension of 25 years to give this individual a chance to undo his mistakes, to fix his wrongs. And we don't understand, but he's so wicked, this guy is so full of evil. Yeah, but Hashem knows why he's giving him a chance. So in the hashgacha, in Hashem's involvement in this world, there are many, many things we don't understand. But we know at least that this is one of the principles. And it helps to know this, because there we're not going to be surprised. So Hashem Marichaf, he's tolerant with those who are evil. We will see that he talks about the ultimate purpose of life being the knowledge of God, the fear of God, and the performance of mitzvot. He will briefly talk about the area of the esoteric. Esoteric means that which concerns malachim, angels, and even demons. There are many, many things that are around in this creation that we don't see exactly, we don't really directly experience, and it's not for us to try to understand it. It's beyond us. So don't ask too many questions about that which we do not know too much, that which we can't relate about. There are certain things that we cannot find out as long as we're in this physical world. And of course, one of the most important ideas that he will talk about will be, don't push off things for mañana, tomorrow. As long as we're alive, as long as the physical body is united with the neshama, that's the time of action. Once the two split and each one goes its way, neshama there, the body there, once they're no longer together, there's nothing more you can do in the grave, as he will point out. In the Sheol, in the grave, no more, too late. So as long as you are together, neshama and guf, go ahead and don't postpone, don't push off anything. As much as you can do. You never know. You can never know what your true potential is. So if you really have a good idea, put it to work, because there may not be a mañana. He will talk about the nitzchiyut hanefesh, or the asharat hanefesh, the eternal nature of the soul. The soul lasts forever, unless it's destroyed, of course, but the soul goes back to its maker when a person dies. You know, lately, that's interesting, a lot of people have testified that they were around a person who was about to die, and they just saw something leaving him. They actually observed something. Sometimes if you're lucky, you can actually see something. And there's even pictures about these things, you know, something coming out. So lately, somehow, there's more and more proof that there's something else other than the body. And when the body dies, stops pumping, the heart stops pumping, there's no more air, right? That physical body dies, but the ruach, the shuv Elokim, goes back to its maker. So the nefesh, the neshama, is eternal. The guf is not. And of course, one of the last points that he'll talk about is schar v'onesh. There is something called reward and punishment. We're not just here for a picnic. We're here to earn. And if we don't do things right, if we misbehave, that means we are hurting God's creation. We're damaging it. You got to pay for it. You know, you just can't do anything you want, anything you want, and just get away with it. If you are destructive in some ways, you hurt people, you hurt Hashem's world, then there's onesh. And onesh is not a punishment the way we think of punishment, because human beings punish because they're upset. When God punishes, it's not because he's upset, it's because it's a tikkun for that individual. He wants to offer him a way to rectify his deeds. So that's the onesh is always something important. Look at the word onesh, and what are the first three letters of the word onesh? Ain, Vav, Nun, Avon. You see the word onesh? The first three letters of onesh is Avon. In other words, the onesh comes as a result of the Avon, of the sin, to rectify it, to correct it, to cleanse one of it. So it's a necessity. It's not that Hashem is upset, he's going to get back at you. That is the way the system of the world works. There's din, there's rachamim, there has to be a balance here. Too much evil, there has to be a way to eliminate that. All the major disasters of the world, the Kabbalah teaches, whether it's a flood, a tsunami, an earthquake, that sends sometimes not only a message to awaken people that what they're doing is wrong, something is wrong. Besides that, it also acts as a way of balancing things out. The attribute of justice is demanding justice. How long can this go on? So something comes out in a physical way to balance things out. So this is all Sachar va'onesh in Olam Hazeh, besides, of course, what is awaiting one in Olam Haba, in the world to come, as far as the reward for one's performance and the Gehenom or whatever for the Histikun. Okay. This was pretty much what Shlomo Melech will be discussing in general terms. Before we start with the first two Pesukim, you know what, maybe I should read it to you first, and then I'll explain to you what he's trying to accomplish in telling us in the very, very beginning of his Sefer. Because the very beginning of the Sefer is really the definition of how he sees life. And the end of the Sefer, which will be several months from now, B'ezrat Hashem, you will see what the bottom line is. And what's interesting about this is that because he doesn't tell you the bottom line in the beginning, the rabbis actually wanted to put the Sefer away and not have it published. They were afraid about certain things that were misleading, can be misleading. But if you read the whole thing, then you realize, oh, I see, that's the bottom line. The bottom line is good. If the bottom line makes sense, then the whole Sefer must be good. But you don't really know what he's about to tell you. If you're starting from the very beginning, going pasuk after pasuk, verse after verse, and you're going to go till then, you don't know where he's headed yet. There's a lot of surprises. There's a lot of information. What is he trying to communicate to us in the very beginning? Divrei Kohelet ben David melech b'Yerushalayim. That's how it starts. These are the words of Kohelet ben David. Kohelet is Shlomo. Remember last week we said Kohelet is called Kohelet because he gathered, Wikhil. He gathered people to give lectures to teach. Pasuk bet, Havel Havalim amar Kohelet. Everything is a bunch of vanities. In other words, if I can define life in one word, it's all Havel. But be careful. Is it really all Havel? Everything is Havel? Well, not exactly, but it appears to be that's what he's saying. Havel Havalim, I've seen everything. Shlomo Melech says, I've had all the wealth, all the money, all the women too. You know, he had 1,000 wives. So he knows something about women, about marriage, right? He's had everything he wanted. So Havel, he says, Havel Havalim, Amar Qohelet, Havel Havalim, Akol Havel. Look how many times he repeats it. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Just say Havel. No, Havel Havalim, Amar Qohelet. Havel Havalim. It's all vanities. Akol Havel again. Everything is vanities. Okay. Vanities. What a fancy word in English, but in Hebrew it makes a lot more sense when you think about what the word Havel means. But before we get to the root of the word Havel, what does it really mean? What is his message here? What is he really trying to do here? This is the beginning of the book. He's trying to define his whole mission here. In other words, his whole goal in writing the Sefer. The rabbis tell us that this whole world is called Olam HaSheker. This is a false world, a world of falsehood. In other words, it's not what you see. Not necessarily what you see. That's not necessarily the reality. It's sheker. A lot of things are sheker. There's a lot of sheker, a lot of things that are not the way they really appear to be. Remember the famous saying in Pirkei Avot, Al tistakel bakankan, ela b'ma sheyesh bo. Don't judge a book by its cover, like they say in English. Don't look at the jug from the outside, it may be beautiful gold. I want to know what's inside. That matters more. I'm going to be drinking it. Is it good wine? Is it sour wine? What's in that jug? Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a person by how he dresses, how he looks, his hair comb, he's wearing a tuxedo, right? So what? He may be rotten in the inside, right? I'm sure you've met people like that, right? On the outside, it looks nice. Then some people on the outside, they don't look very impressive, but they're full of wisdom. They're very nice. They're very kind. So don't judge they say in English, and I'm sure it's in all languages, don't judge a book by its cover. So rabbis are telling us that this olam is sheker. And there is another saying in Hebrew and in other languages, lo kol davar shezoher, no? Lo kol davar shezoher, zahav. Right? Something like that. Not everything that shines is gold. Have you heard something like that? But it looks gold. Not everything that shines and is yellow is gold. It could be some other material. So not everything that you see so beautiful and that is so attractive is really what you think it is. It's deceiving. Why is it so deceiving? Why is it so full of lies? Why is this world not a true reality? Why is it that when we see something we can't figure it out, we can't know with certainty what it is? That it's called sheker. Part of it has to do with because many things are hidden from us. Purposefully, intentionally. Hashem created this world a little bit where things are concealed. If everything would be 100% obvious and clear, then that would interfere with free will. So there is a reason why several things, quite a few things, are concealed. But because things are concealed, that makes it more difficult to figure it out. Right? We wish things could be transparent. You know, later you go to the airport, they try to see through your entire body. You know, they have these machines, they're trying to see everything as much as they can see. You know, they can't see everything, but almost. You know, they're trying to know everything about you. Well, they will never be able to know your thoughts. As the rabbis tells us, some things that you can never know. And that is, one of the things is what another individual is thinking about. No matter how much of a psychic you are, it makes no difference. Thoughts are completely hidden. Okay? So, certain things Hashem intentionally hid. They're concealed. And that adds a little bit to the difficulty of figuring things out. And because of that, sometimes things are not exactly the way we see it. Then, on top of that, you have a lot of confusion. What's the confusion? On the one hand, you see all kinds of good actions, good deeds. On the other hand, you see people who are selfish and jealous, people being destructive, doing evil things, war, murder, terrorism. There's a lot of confusion in this world. Imagine somebody waking up from his grave who lived 300 years ago. He'd go crazy. He'd go back into his grave. What's this? What kind of a world is this? First of all, of course, he never saw cars and electricity. There's so many new things now. But the world is crazy today, in many, many ways. The way they dress, So there's a lot of contradiction. There's a lot of confusion. Things that don't make sense. On the one hand, everything is so beautiful. And here, everything is so ugly. What's going on over here? So this confusion also lends a little bit to the problem of trying to be able to figure out what's going on in this world. What is this world for? So things are not obvious. Then you have another area which makes things a little bit more difficult, and that is the kituv, the polarization, as they would call it in English, between wealth and poverty. You think you know what poor people are? You go to India once, and you'll see what real people, or Africa, poor people that earn $1 a week, or whatever it is, Poor, poverty. There's poverty and there's wealth, and sometimes in the same country, in the same city. Such extremes. What's going on? That's not fair, right? Why is it like this? Does it have to be like this? No, this is part of the sheker. This is all part of the sheker, of the lies. Then you see Hashem's organization in beautiful detail. And then you see the ability of man to be able to destroy all of that with nuclear bombs. Right? So here Hashem creates, everything is so right, everything is so beautiful, and man has the ability to destroy. Give you a quick example of man's ability to destroy. Does anybody know how many tigers there are in the world? You don't know how many tigers? I mean, you don't count how many tigers? You don't know how many tigers are in the world. Yeah. You want to take a guess? How many tigers are there in the world? No?
200.
What?
200?
That's 200. Nah. What?
3,000?
You're close. Yeah.
I think 5,000.
I'm talking about in the wild, not in zoos, because in zoos they have quite a bit today. But they're estimating that there's about 3,500 tigers in the world, in the wild. They're estimating. It could be a little bit more. It depends which tigers you count. But anyway, what happened? Years ago, 50, 60 years ago, there was about 4 or 5 times as much, or even more. What happened? Anybody want to guess what happened to the tigers?
Hunters?
Huh?
Hunters?
Who would want to eat tiger meat?
Well,
hides.
Huh? The skin, exactly. They kill them. They used to kill them. They still do for the hides. Some people like the bones in China. They mix it with their soup for all kinds of things they believe in.
people chopping down their forest and all that.
Forest, yeah. Yeah, all kinds of factors that are human related. Human related. Remember, the only animal, the only creature in the world that will never become extinct because it was blessed by Hashem is fish. You know why Hashem blessed fish? Because the Japanese need sushi. So you gotta have a lot of fish. So he gave them a blessing. But all the other animals in the world can become extinct. They have been. Dinosaurs have become extinct. Many animals that used to live here, outside over here, are extinct. Only a little while ago, you had something called the saber-toothed tiger over here. You had a mastodon, you had a mammoth, you had a camel, right? You had the American lion. Lions here. Where are they? What? They became, huh?
In the feet.
In the La Brea tar pits, exactly. In the museums.
Mountain lions?
No, I'm not talking about mountain, I'm talking about regular lions. Mountain lions you still have. What has happened? These things have become extinct. Man-related, most of the time man-related. But there was, of course, the major flood. There was other disasters, natural disasters. There's famine. If there's no water, animals die. Right? And that's what's happening in some parts of Africa. When there's not enough water, certain animal species die out. There's not enough of them. Yes?
Will this happen to humans?
No.
We will not go extinct?
No. Hashem wants human beings. That's the whole world is about human beings. Okay? You had wolves become extinct in the United States, in the 48 states. Until recently, they reintroduced them to Montana, to Idaho, to Wyoming, to several states. They are introduced now. Big fights between ranchers and the government. They're eating our cows. Yeah, but we want wolves. All right. So anyway, what do we see? Man has the ability to destroy, to kill, to just do a lot of harm to the environment. What about the environment? We forgot about that. The smog, right? So this all adds to the confusion. A lot of confusion. And what's going on? What kind of a world do we live with? Maybe just everything is so random. It doesn't seem like it's organized. Anybody can do whatever he wants, and it's such destruction, so much evil. So you get to see what we're talking about here. All of this leads to one not having the right idea about what life is about, what the world is all about, and that is what the rabbis tell us. This is olam is sheker. You cannot possibly fully understand what's going on, unless, of course, you see it through the eyes of the Torah. Another way of describing this is dimyoni, as we say in Hebrew. It's all dimyoni. It's the imagination. In other words, a lot of the things that we see are not real, they're imagined. Even though they are physically real, we can feel them, but they don't really necessarily have the value we attribute to them. Money. Money we will see. He puts a lot of emphasis on money. Money is one of those things that we attribute a lot of value to, but it doesn't have the value we attribute to. I'm not talking about right now devaluation of the currency, which is besides the point. But money in itself, it's not really what you think it is. It's not what you think it can do for you. It's one of those things that it's imagined. It's imagined in our minds. And that's why the rabbis call it's olam ha-sheker. And because it's olam ha-sheker, our mouths and our eyes cannot be good judges as to if something is good or bad. You know, there are some medications that are very bitter. You ask somebody, is this good or bad? It's very bitter. It's bad. But it can save a person's life. It's medication. It's bitter. The mouth cannot be a good judge as to if something is really good or bad. There are some things that are so sweet and so good, and we'd love to have that chocolate chip cookie, we'd love to have that Danish, and that 7-layer cake. Yeah, but what if you're diabetic, chas v'shalom? What if you're, this could be poison to you, right? Is it good? It's not for you, right? And then that's something that's bad could be really good. What do we know? So the eyes and the hech, the mouth, right, cannot possibly be good judges in determining whether something is good or bad. We need something else to tell us what is good and what is bad. So therefore, now we understand why Shlomo Melech begins his Sefer Kohelet with Havel Havalim. Havel Havalim, in the simple way of understanding the words, means that everything is worthless. Everything is a bunch of nothing. It's all zero, nada, as we say in Spanish. Right? It's really not what you think it is. One big rabbi used to say, I don't know how many of you understand Yiddish here. Does anybody here know what the word krechts is?
I've heard of it.
Oh, you've heard of it, yeah.
Sigh.
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 Sigh, and it's a combination of to sigh and whine. Okay? When a person really, says this whole world is now worth one krechts. It's not worth krechtzing about. In other words, it's not worth, sighing about or feeling bad about it, because if you really knew what really matters, you wouldn't care about all these trivialities. So, Hevel Avalim, meaning it's not worth talking about too much, thinking about too much. It's really meaningless. That's the simple meaning of the word Hevel Avalim. Now let's take apart the word Hevel. Why does he use the word Hevel here to describe nothingness or vanities? In Hebrew, the word Hevel means vapor. The Hevel that comes out of our mouth. Vapor is like thin air. Vapor is something that disappears. Right? So he compares everything to thin air. As we say in Arabic, to hawa. In other words, all of this is just air. Right? It's nothing. And it disappears. It's davar she'en bo mamash. What do you mean it disappears? Because you don't take it with you. Whatever money you've made here, it goes away. It disappears. It stays behind. You go, and it stays. Right? In other words, it's like air. It's thin air. It's not worth our time and our trouble to think too much into it. It's heaven. That's why he uses that word. As I said in the beginning, there may be some pesukim that contradict each other, or maybe some pesukim that seem to be very difficult to understand, because how could he say something like that? This is one. In a way, this may be one. Shlomo, how can you say everything is Hevel Avalim? What about the Torah mitzvot? You see what I mean? There are certain pesukim that are much more difficult than this one. There is one that says, go enjoy yourself. Make the best of it. Have a good time. So the rabbi said, oh no. Look what he's telling the young people to do, to enjoy themselves. But if you read the verse right after that, you will see, yeah, but remember you're accountable for everything you do. So if you have to read everything to understand where he's getting to. So even though here he begins by saying everything is Hevel Avalim, it doesn't really mean everything. He says everything the eye sees and everything you think is important You are in for a big surprise. And I'm letting you know this in advance. And I really wish, people would learn this when they're 18, 19, 20. Not when they're 50, 55, 60, most of their life went by. Because then they may agree with most of this, of course, on their own. It's important to realize this before. Before you get married, learn the rules of marriage. Learn how to get along, because once you get married, of course, it's nice that you're learning as you go along, but you don't want to make mistakes. Those mistakes can be very costly, emotionally. They leave behind
Yeah, but
scars.
some of the best lessons is from mistake.
Right. That's right. But if you can, if it's possible to learn certain things without going through it, learning them before, it's always better. Right? So there, let's imagine you went to a rabbi, to somebody who can counsel you about life, about marriage. And he tells you certain things to avoid, to be careful with. And you run into that situation 15 years from after you got married. It may save your marriage. It may be something that you say, oh, thank God that he told me this back then. Yeah. There's certain things nobody tells us, and we have to learn it the hard way. Well, why learn it the hard way? Learn Kohelet, learn Mishlei, learn Pirkei Avot, learn it early on, and you realize these things beforehand. So when he tells us Havel Avalim, he doesn't really mean everything. He means almost everything, or at least what we see. But there are things, of course, that are not Havel. That is the Torah. Let's discuss the reason why he says Havel so many times now. He said Havel Avalim. Why 7 times? Where do you have 7 times? You have Havel, that's 1. Havalim, that's 2. That's 3 altogether, because Avalim is 2. Havel Avalim again, that's another 3. That's 6. Akol Havel, 7. You see? 7 times the word Havel is used over here. Why so much Havel? So the rabbis tell us as follows in the Midrash, I believe. Shlomo Melech is discussing the various kufot, the various periods in a person's life. There are 7 periods. Period number 1, he's a baby, and he's compared to a king where everybody hugs and kisses him. What a nice time in a person's life. Imagine you're so popular. Who does he look like? That's what they're talking about. Oh, look how he's laughing, how he's smiling. They love him, they kiss him. They don't realize that this baby could become a monster, Chas v'shalom, one day. You never know. They're all cute. So the infancy, as we call it, baby period, Tkufat Tinok, he's like a king. Then you have the Tkufa, the second Tkufa, between the age of 2 and 3. Anybody have little kids here? You know what's the age of 2 and 3? What does a baby do when he's 2? Huh? That's right. You had them recently. Yeah. He's already walking. He's not just crawling. And because he's already walking, he's opening things. Remember those times that you have to put strings?
Discovery time, yeah.
Discovery time. 2 and 3, the age of 2 and 3, they call this period, he's a chazir. He's like a pig. He gets dirty, right? Putting food on himself. That's the way he's 2 to 3. Then comes the age of 10 and above, approximately, where he's compared to a goat. Running around, jumping, playing, right? That's the age he's called a goat. Then comes the period of 20. He's like a sus, like a horse, making himself look nice to impress the women. He wants to get married, some aftershave, nice haircut, looks himself at the mirror. That's the age of 20 approximately. He wants to impress people. This is the age of marriage. Then there's the age of 30. He's considered like a hamor, like a donkey. Because now he has to carry the burden of parnasah. He has to begin looking for a job. Difficult period. Then comes 40. Then he's like a pig. He's chatzuf. He sometimes has to beg for money and for loans to borrow. He goes to be embarrassed. Everything because imagine, that's the time to marry off kids. That's a very difficult period in life. 40 to 50. It's not easy for some people. They finally settled in their job, but they got to take a second job. So it's a very difficult time. Then comes 60. Zikna, downhill. That's the time you become like a monkey, where in the old age everybody starts making fun of you. That's what the rabbis tell us. That age when people are old, they're elderly, they're no longer kissed and hugged, right? They're no longer running around and jumping, right? They're no longer like the horse who wants to look. That's the time when, of course, they're becoming weaker and weaker, and people, instead of looking up to them, they look down at them, unfortunately. Unless, of course, they're great, wise people. These 7 stages are also called as follows. They're called Yaldut in Hebrew, infancy or the childhood years, Na'arut, the teenage years, Bacharut, the younger years, Amidah, the years that you stand up on your feet, Yerida, the years that you start going downhill, Zkina, or Zikna I should say, the elder years, and Seva. Seva is when you've reached 70 or more, when you already have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so forth. Why does he describe all these stages? What's the idea behind all these stages? They're all different, so what? What's interesting about the stages is that as you cross over from one stage to another, the toys that were important to you in the early stage are no longer important to you. The toys that are important to a child when he becomes a teenager, you see him playing with the little Lego. Not anymore, no more Lego. Teenage, he wants to get his car already. That's his toy. Every stage has toys. What does that mean? Every stage has things that interests him, that are important to him. And as soon as he crosses over to the next stage, he says, I don't need this. Humoes batzatzuim, that he had before. He despises it. He says, I don't need this anymore. Who needs that? He doesn't care about it. And that's how it is with every stage you come to realize that that stage was Havel Havalim. I don't need it. It doesn't serve me any good. You got rid of it, right? Then, of course, you have the people that they go from the Toyota to the Ferrari. You know, that's for them their stage. You know, that's because they have more money, or I don't know why. But usually, every stage, you see how insignificant is the stage that was before you as far as what interested you then. It's all shtuyot. It's all nonsense. What you cared about, what you worried about, doesn't bother you anymore. So little by little, as life progresses, hopefully, people begin to see, it's a kol hever. And many people will say, I wish I can do it all over again. Right? But it's already too late. It's never too late to do teshuvah, but at least a person comes and realizes, and that is why rabbis tell us, ben chamishim le'etzah. When you reach 50, you can already give advice to people. 50? Yeah, because 50, you've gone through quite a bit. You've had a lot of life's experiences. You've seen quite a bit, hopefully. Your eyes have been open. You haven't been in denial. And therefore, you can see that what you thought was important is not important. This is not worth fighting about. This is not worth arguing about. This is not worth worrying about. See? Had you not worried, you would have been healthier. You would have had a better life. You see, you worried for nothing. Everything worked out the way Hashem wanted it to work out. Why did you worry? Why were you upset? Had you known that everything was Hashem anyway, you wouldn't have been upset. You wouldn't have ruined your life. You know, people go through all kinds of issues and challenges, and then of course, without the proper guidance, they're really confused and troubled and in pain. And that's the importance about these things. We realize, or we're supposed to realize with time, that everything is Havel Avalim anyway. These things don't matter. A lot of the things, not everything, but a lot of the physical things really don't matter as much as we think they do. Okay, so far what do we see? That so much is Havel Avalim. So much is Havel Avalim. If that's the case, then why did Hashem create all this Havel? Buildings are Havel. Cars are Havel. They have good use. We have good use of them. They take us. Transportation is very good. So it's all Havel. It's true. Then why did Hashem create all this Havel? Oh, here comes a big surprise. There was a teacher who was teaching numbers to his first. I don't know when they teach numbers, first grade, whatever. He was teaching them 1 to 9. Okay. Now they all knew from 1 to 9. Now the teacher comes over and tells the class, now we're going to learn about 0. What is zero? Zero means zero. It's nothing. Teacher, one student raises his hand. If zero is nothing, then what purpose does it serve? Oh, zero is nothing when it's by itself. But if you put the zero next to a number, it increases the importance of that number. You put 1 0 next to the 1, it's a 10. You add 2 zeros, it becomes 100. Zero by itself is nothing. Zero added to a number has tremendous value. Havel Havalim by itself, the world, the vanities, the olam hazeh, all the hanaot and the pleasures by themselves, for themselves, it's zero. It's worthless. But if you use it for Torah and mitzvot, if you use these things for the right reasons, then of course they can make life easier. Then they can help you. Then they serve a purpose. And they can of course save you time. They can do a lot of things for you. So it depends how you look at it. I remember one guy once coming to a rabbi and asking for a blessing. What kind of a blessing do you want? He says, I want to buy a new car. He says, be ashamed of yourself. You want blessings from cars? He says, but Rabbi, every time I go from Yerushalayim to Tel Aviv, I give trempim. Trempim is I give a ride. I give a ride to people who, stick their hands out, who want a ride. Oh, I see you do a mitzvah with your car? Fine, I'll give you a beracha for that, I'll give you a beracha. In other words, you're going to be using your car for a good cause, for good reasons. I've said that. Just cars, just for the fun of it, Some people make a big, you know what you see here a lot in this street of Los Angeles, and possibly in other cities too, on a Sunday? Americans washing their cars. Did you ever see that? The hose, waxing it, sponging it, soaping it, or car wash. But a lot of them enjoy doing this themselves. What are they doing? They're taking care of their car. What's the big deal? The car, it has 4 wheels and tires and takes you to work, it takes you where you need to. Why are you treating it like a baby? I'm not saying your car should be dirty. The car should be clean, of course, from time to time. But sometimes people overdo it. Oh, oy vavoy, if you got one scratch, it's the end of the world for them, that one scratch. Especially if they just bought it from the dealer. Just right away. It's gashmiut. It's materialism. It's just a means of getting you to work or wherever you need to go. Don't overdo it. It's not such a big deal. Then you have the people who have to have the latest car. The latest one. Always, they change. Now, if they have the money, they have millions of dollars, okay, so they're entitled to have the best one. But what about people who don't have that much? It's an extra pressure. The problem is that you have all this sheker. Remember we spoke about a world of sheker? Who's the sheker here? The advertisements, the companies. You think they want what's best for you? They want what's best for them. You know what they'll tell you? They'll send you a letter in the mail. Sir, you owe it to yourself. Spoil yourself. All kinds of nice words. You owe it to yourself. How do you know I owe it to myself? Yeah, you owe yourself a vacation. I just had one. How do you know? You owe yourself a vacation. And we're going to tell you where to go and hotels and everything. And don't worry about it if you can't pay for it. You can pay in installments. Charge it to your Visa, and they're already over the phone. Can I have the number of what? Of the credit card? Oh, I don't have one. You don't have a credit card? Like you're supposed to have a credit card because you're supposed to live on credit. After all, that's what everybody does in this country. They live on borrowed money. You don't have it, you don't spend it. You see where this sheker is creeping in? This is why this country is bankrupt. They've been living above their standards. You can't afford something, you don't buy it. You don't allow yourself. No, they have to have the latest iPhone. Is it iPhone or something? Or Verizon or whatever?
Yeah.
How do you know about that? Yeah. It's a few $100s. Why get it? Can't you do without it? Most people can. No, but he has it. We'll have to get it. Or because they have pressure. Or because you got something in the mail. We'll give you a rebate. We're going to give you a rebate for it. Yeah, send it in the mail. That's how they're getting your money. Sheker. All olama sheker. They want to make money on you. You don't really need it. This is sheker. Havel havalim. People are not sincere. People are not truthful. That's part of this world. It's a crazy world. And a lot of people fall for it. You know why advertisement, they spend millions of dollars on advertisement? Because it works. There's one advertisement in Israel that tells the man, Tiye gever, tishte Maccabi. You want to be a man? Drink Maccabi beer. That's how you're going to be a man. So the guy comes home and says, yeah, I'm going to be a man. I'm going to drink Maccabi. Yes, that's what some people think. Yeah. That's what this is sheker. It's all shtuyot. It makes me laugh and cry at the same time. I don't know why. What's going on over here? But that's what it's all about. It's all ephes. This is ephes. 0. But if you add the ephes to a number, then you're incrementing the value of the number. You're giving it a koach. Hashem gave us the olam hazeh. Hashem gave us all the things to enjoy. You enjoy the avocados, enjoy the mango, you better. The rabbis tell us in the Gemara, whoever did not enjoy, did not make a blessing on something that Hashem made in this world, and he had the ability to, eventually they're going to ask him about it. They're going to demand of it. Why didn't you? I created this for you to enjoy, to appreciate, and to bless, and to thank Hashem for it. Don't deprive yourself, but be careful you don't overdo it. Don't overdo it, because this is not the ikar, this is not the main thing. This is not what you're here for. And besides, you're going to get a stomach ache. Besides, if you overdo it when it comes to food. So in the same way that there's a stomach ache, there is a heartache. There's a heartache from doing all kinds of things, from being involved in all kinds of things that you can't afford and do. That's the difference between the non-Jewish mentality and the Jewish mentality. The problem with the Jewish mentality is that they learn from the non-Jewish mentality. Assimilation does not necessarily mean intermarrying. It also means learning from the ways of different cultures. This is all sheker. This is lies. This is the worthless. This only leads to trouble. Why do you think so many divorces occur today? I'm not going to give you all the reasons now, but one reason is people who saw TV, they see what love is like in Hollywood. Oh, I don't have that kind of a loving, passionate, romantic relationship. I want it like the movie stars have it. Well, you go find out how many times they were divorced. Those same movie stars in the movies. You'd be surprised. They're the ones that are getting divorced the most. But not on TV. What do you think TV is? It's sheker. That's the capital of sheker, is Hollywood. That's the sheker. That's where everything is made up. It's a fantasy land. Yeah, like Fantasy Island, remember? Yeah. Everything is a fantasy. So what happens without Torah? Without Torah, what you have is as follows. You have what the rabbis tell us is called salt water. What's salt water? Salt water, if you drink it, what happens to you?
Thirsty.
That's right. Do you know that if you drink certain sodas, you're going to be thirsty more than you were in the beginning?
Most of it.
Most of them, right? What is the best drink to drink if you don't want to be thirsty? Water. Or milk, I think, right? But if you drink a sweet drink, you may become thirstier than you were in the beginning. Now that's okay, they don't tell you that. You think they're going to tell you that? They tell you, well, this drink, they say, is good for your heart, or whatever it is. Or don't drink it if you're pregnant. You know, all kinds of things that they have to put, whatever. They're not going to tell you that this is going to make you more thirsty, or that this has so much sugar that it's not good for you. Yeah, of course they don't. They don't tell you these things. So the rabbis, the commentaries explain like this. If a person does not use the hanaot in this world, does not manage his life with Torah, then all the hanaot, the pleasures and the motarot, the excesses, will be like salt water. Meaning the more he drinks it, the thirsty he will be, and it will not quench his thirst. Here he's thinking, I'm going to get this and it's going to quench my thirst. All I need is my dream house with 4 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, right? The American dream. A nice home with a dog. All I need is that and I'll be happy. You don't understand. You know, that's not going to quench your thirst. The rabbis warn us, if you have a hole in the wall, seal it. Because if you don't seal it, you're going to end up demolishing the wall, remodeling the kitchen after that, which has nothing to do with this wall, right? Then changing the carpets in the home because everything got dirty in the midst, right? You see how new construction drags a person into debt? Much more, he ends up spending much more than he ever thought. 2 or 3 times as much. That's a rule that was written in the Talmud and the Gemara years ago, and it's still very true. Anybody that did new construction can testify to that. You never, almost rarely, unless it's a small project, very small project, you never end up spending, you spend much more than what you thought. Be very, very careful with that. Really, it's not worth it, right? And it's sometimes it's complete waste. Yeah. So therefore, if the motarot, the things that we're supposed to enjoy, the material things that we have in this world, the physical, is not managed properly through the eyeglasses of Torah, it will be like salt water. You will have it, it will not quench your thirst. You will be thirsty and more thirsty, you will want more and more. They asked once John Paul Getty, he's a rich man, millionaire. So John, how much is enough? Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. You never know. You have 100, you want 200. It never ends. With that which is materialist, people want more and more. So it will not quench their thirst because they don't have the eyes of the Torah. One of the worst things that really bothers me, and I have to beg your forgiveness, anybody who may be a little bit insulted by this. So I won't mention names of communities, but you'll understand anyway.
Here we go.
Got to spend $100,000 in a wedding. Some people do, some communities. $100,000 in a wedding. Flowers galore. What for? Oh, it doesn't look right if I spend less than this because they'll be talking about it in my community. My community, my mentality, the way they look at things, I have to do what they say. Oh, I feel sorry for you, you're a slave. I told you once a story. Somebody in the Persian community was asked, why are you so large on a bar mitzvah of your son, and for the wedding of your daughter last year, you were so skimpy. A bar mitzvah, you spend more than a wedding? He says, yeah, from a bar mitzvah, there's no divorce. For the wedding, I don't know. I don't know. So he's smart. Yeah. So he didn't spend so much for his daughter's wedding because he doesn't know what's going to happen. Yeah, he was smart. But even so, well, look at all the pressure in certain communities to spending, what for? For the one night to feed all these people who you don't...
Next morning, everybody forgets what they have for dinner.
Exactly. And I tell these people right on the invitation that on this wedding there's no food served. How many are going to come? Only your real best friends. And those are the ones you want to have at your wedding. That means you're feeding half the community who you don't see maybe once a year on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. You have to invite them to the wedding. What for? You owe them something? No, you don't owe. Really, you're putting yourself into debt for nothing. And where does this come from? From pressure. Everybody does it. You don't have to be like everybody. Where does it say that in the Torah that you have to be like everybody else if they do foolish things? It doesn't say that. Pressures. Pressure comes from sheker. It's all sheker. It's all falsehood. It's silly. But people go into debt. People are miserable. People hate themselves after that. There's machloket in the home between husband and wife because of that. There's tension because of that. Who asked you to do this for? Who told you to do it? Why? Make it simple, make it modest. About 100 people. Don't make it as fancy. Have fake silk flowers. What's wrong with that? Those real flowers anyway die after 2-3 days, and silk lasts forever. Isn't that beautiful? They last forever. Let everybody take it home.
And you can give it out to other people.
You can give it out to other people, sure. Reuse it. Right? It's sheker. This is all examples. I gave you just a few examples of sheker. All right, let's go to the next pasuk, just for the next 5 minutes, and see an example of Shlomo Melech's chokhmah. After he's told us that everything is Havel. Ma yitron la'adam b'chol amalo she'yamol tachat hashamesh. What does man gain from all the hard work that he works under the sun? That's the translation of the pasuk. Ma yitron, what does he gain from all the hard work that he works under the sun? Under the sun means while he's alive. In other words, after all, what does he gain if he anyway ends up leaving it behind? You know what's the worst thing that can happen to a person that Shlomo Melech is very sad and depressed about? We will learn it later on. He says in different words, one of the things that depresses me the most and really makes me feel bad is a poor fellow who worked so hard and saved every penny, and then he dies and he leaves it to the second husband of his wife. That's the worst thing that could ever happen to someone. He says, I feel so bad for him. He didn't enjoy it himself. We'll get to that eventually. But that's the question he asks here on the simple level. What is it beneficial for? What is all the good of all this hard work for if you leave it behind? So the question here is, why do people work so hard? So it must not be that this is what we're here for. I mean, obviously, we don't need to work so hard. So the way to read this pasuk is like this: Ma yitron la'adam. If all the things that we have is all vanities and not that important, and we leave it behind, then the real question that we should be asking ourselves would be, Ma yitron la'adam. In other words, what have we acquired for ourselves that will make a difference to us? Not what will make a difference to the world. Because after all, you build a building, it's good for the world. You did contribute something, but no. Ask yourself, Ma yitron la'adam. What have you gained that you take with you? What have you gained that is your own personal gain? For the Adam himself, have you become a better person? Have you done mitzvot ma'asim tovim? That's what you should be asking yourself. Yitron is also a priority. Why is what you think a priority a priority? Why is what you've been working so hard that important? Why should that be more important than Torah? Person comes upstairs. Imagine, did you learn Torah every day? At least 15, 20 minutes? No, I didn't have time. But wait a minute. We know that you spent an hour reading the sports section of the LA Times, another half an hour looking at all the gossip in the LA Times, another hour and a half on the internet. You didn't have time, 15, 20 minutes for the Torah. How come those things were more important to you? Obviously, if you spent that much time, it means that you gave them importance. That's what Yitron means. Yitron means importance, also priority. Why? A person has to ask himself, why am I giving this more priority than that? You better have a good reason. We better have a good explanation. Why should those things be more important than the shiur, than the Torah? Another idea is Ma yitaron tachat hashemesh. Eventually we'll be talking more about this, but I'll just give you an idea of what he's saying here. Tachat hashemesh is also inferring mazal. Shemesh has to do with the mazal of a person. You think you can add anything to your mazal? If Bashamayim it says you're going to make $45,000 this year, you think you can add a penny to that? Ma yitron. You're going to add to that by working harder, by working 12 hours and deprive yourself of giving your time to your family and Shurei Torah because you think you can add to the mazal? Your mazal is set. And if you think you can change that, you don't know what you're talking about. There's no yitaron. Ma yitron. What could you add more than what your mazal has already determined you're going to make? But this is a concept that we will talk more in length later on. And finally, we have the idea that is a little bit more Kabbalistic. Ma yitron la'adam under Tachat HaShemesh means that the real work that a person is supposed to do is not beneath the sun in this world. He's supposed to be focused on the world above the Shemesh. He's Olam Haba, in the world to come. Have you done anything for that? In other words, what do you gain by only working Tachat HaShemesh, by only doing work down here below? You know, sweeping your home, buying toilet paper, right? Eating. You know, all the routine things. What do you gain by just doing these things if the Yikar HaAvodah is above the Shemesh, not below the Shemesh? So just to finish up for tonight, rabbis tell us that the real purpose that a person has to aim for is something called Seidah Laderech. Seidah Laderech is when you go on a long journey, you take Seidah. Right? Zalman, how do you say Seidah? You take with you provisions for the road. You travel 5 hours, you're going to take some drinks, you're going to take some food. Seidah Laderech. Rabbis tell us we have to equip ourselves for Seidah Laderech. We have a short journey here, but we have a long journey up there. And what do we need there? We need Seidah. What's that Seidah for that journey? Torah, mitzvot, ma'asim tovim. That's what we have to take with us. The few $1,000s in the bank, the mutual bonds, the IRA, what is it? The
IRAs.
Yeah, IRAs, all these retirement things. That's good to have. I'm not saying it's not bad. You can have it, but that's not going to be Seidah Laderech.
You can't take it with you.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to last you for a couple years. So you retire Social Security and whatever for as long as it lasts. Before they go bankrupt, of course. And there's nothing left. But the tzedala that we have to work on is the Torah mitzvot maasim tovim. So we have to remember, in order for that to be our focus, that this world is a prosdor le'olam haba. It's a walkway. It's not the place. It's a station. Right? You take a flight. It's nice to take a non-stop flight to Israel these days, 14 and a half, 15 hours, and you're there. But sometimes you have to make a stop in New York, in Toronto, in Europe, and there's no direct flight. What can you do? But at least as long as you get to your destination safe, no complaints. This olam is a stop. I mean, we're not going to be here forever. We're going to continue on to our final destination. We have to remember that. So this is a prosdor. Don't spend too much time here. You know what has happened to people who got lost in the duty-free and their stops? They didn't make it to the continuation flight. They got distracted in the duty-free or whatever. Yeah. Don't get distracted. This is just a stopover. Before you know it, you have to board the next plane to your final destination. And finally, the rabbis tell us, if we did what we're supposed to do in this world, then we will have what to eat. What does that mean? Rabbis tell us, whoever misha tarach be'erev Shabbat, yochal b'Shabbat. If you worked Friday and you made all the cooking and preparations for Shabbat on Friday or before, then you'll have what to eat on Shabbat. Right? But if you don't prepare, what are you going to have? Tuna fish? You're going to open up a can? I mean, you got to work. You got to prepare yourself. So life is about preparation. But preparation can only come about if we are focused on what we're supposed to be focused and we're not distracted by the lies. Bunch of lies and vanities that surround us, that confuse us, and which makes, of course, life a little bit difficult because of lack of clarity. But by learning the Torah, by learning Kohelet, by learning Mishlei, B'ezrat Hashem, we will have a much, much better idea to avoid the pitfalls and to focus on what we're supposed to do. B'ezrat Hashem.